This is the start of our show.
Woo. And we're live. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jonathan. This is Lewis.
And this is Superhero Chat.
Welcome to Superhero Chat. And today, we're going to be talking about our favorite sci-fi fantasy books.
And by favorite, he means top 5 because we'd be here for the rest of our lives if we just talked about all of them.
Literally, if it's top 5, then it's our favorite.
Oh, that's true.
Boom.
All right.
So,
you know, we don't always follow convention, though.
That's true. Anyways, but first,
speaking of convention,
we've got news and notables. News and notables.
Speaking of convention, what's happening on August the 10th?
I don't know.
In Wake Forest.
I don't know what's happening.
It's the Wake Forest Mini Comic Con. Wake Forest, woo! Play Black Comics. Hopefully, we do get to get.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But yes, so that's pretty much the news and notables I have.
Oh.
I'd say it's been a slow news week, but it hadn't quite been a week. We just did our video on Friday of the Independence Day, so that's
throwing us off a little. The only thing I've read, and it's really just because I forgot to mention it in Friday's video, I read Green Lantern number 8 by Morrison, which has a team up with Ollie. It's been out for a few weeks now, but I finally read it, and I really enjoyed it. Just kind of took me back to the 80s because, you know, say what you will about Morrison these days. I dropped the series in general, but it's
Ollie and Hal teaming up. You have to buy those.
I just felt like his writing really feels like the 80s. It really pulled that. Or is it 70s? We're there in the 70s.
They've been hanging out for a while.
Anyways, it really took me back the way he wrote it, and it was really excellent. And then the other thing was Young Justice number 6. They finally came out of the gym world, and I just really enjoyed this series. I know a lot of people are anti-Bendis, and I can understand why in some cases, but you know, I've enjoyed Young Justice. I'm a little biased, so you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so I haven't watched Spider-Man yet, but I've heard it was really good. Even one of the guys I know who's not really a big nerd like we are said that was good. I was like, "Did you watch it yet?" I was like, "Not yet, but I want to."
Most people have to put on weight to be as big a nerd as me.
Oh, me.
Sorry, I had to make that joke.
Yeah, so
I haven't seen it yet either. I have no idea when I'm going to go watch it.
I'm sure I'll go see it before too long.
It looks awesome, but
I'll be out of town. The next few weeks are going to be a little crazy, so it'll probably be August sometime before I go. So, speaking of, before we jump into our main topic, if you missed our last video, which was kind of weird, we had a bunch of technical difficulties, which seems to be always the case these days. We are not going to be having our live stream for the next couple weeks because I will be out of town next week, and then the week after that, my church has VBS, and I will be swamped. And then week after that, we should be able to. So
between now and then, tell us what you want to see us talk about.
And hopefully, Lord willing, I'll have my new computer and it'll run. We can actually, do video, but we'll see.
Look, Jonathan, that will never stand. You can't promise clarity. You can't promise no hiccups technical wise.
Oh man, I don't know if you saw, Lewis, but in all those videos, because it ended up being broken up into 3 videos for some weird reason.
Weird.
I put in the description, like I narrated it like an old-fashioned Like the Adam West Batman, where it had like the narration at the beginning and end.
Oh, nice.
And I made technical difficulties the villain, and what did he do? What will our heroes do? It was fun. I enjoyed it. It's like the first description I've done in like a month or two. But yeah, I wanted to connect the 3 videos in some way.
Good.
So they kind of did break up between in our intro, because I made one an intro since we sang in it. So if you want to, you can go watch us sing an intro.
Intro our show.
And then the second one was news and notables, and then the third one was the actual topic. So
great.
Anywho, that's all I've got. I'll try to do some videos if I can between now and our next live stream, but we'll just see how it goes. Like I said, the next few weeks are going to be crazy for me. The joys of summer, right?
That's right.
So, but we will be back. We're not going away forever, Lord willing. And yeah, that's all I got. So
Well, hold on before we get started. 2 things: support your local comic store, because if not, they will go out of business.
Right.
I keep reading about all these stores throughout the country that are shutting down, that have been open for a long time. So seriously, if you're into comics or sci-fi or whatever, support your local comic store. Second, support your local bookstore. If you got a used bookstore in the area, please go and patron them. Buy books, read books, fill your head with good stuff.
I was devastated when that big one in Raleigh shut down.
Yeah, I know. Edward McKay's.
That was great.
I just love the smell of that store. You walk in and you just smell the books, and you're like, oh, I'm home.
I mean, you got great deals at that shop, but it shut down for some reason. So,
man, if it hadn't been for that store, there's so many of the books on this bookshelf that you guys can't see, like right above my head here. Jonathan, I'm pointing for your benefit here. I got like so many of these comic book novels from there.
Yeah.
And I would just happen upon them.
I found one that was a Star Trek crossover with the X-Men.
Yes, you bought that, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there's
I haven't read it, but I have it somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's a beautiful cover.
Well, let's jump into it. Our favorite sci-fi and fantasy books or novels. As a clarification for my list, I'm going to, for myself, exclude Star Wars books, because honestly that probably deserves its own video. My favorite, actually, you know what, I did a video a long time ago about my favorite Star Wars books, so if you're interested, you can go check that out.
Link that in the description.
It's one of my first videos, I think. It was that was a year ago. I'm going
to go back and watch it, because I don't think I've seen it yet.
So you can go check that out. My favorite Star Wars books, and I included comic books in that. We are not including comic books in this.
Or comic book characters.
If they started outside of the comics,
there you go.
Then they count. If they started in the comics, they don't.
Right.
And then, so I'm just going to exclude all Star Wars, because that would obviously take up my whole list. So I'm going to just assume that you know that Star Wars, because I'm super biased, is going to be at the top of my list. Hey, I'm always going to admit my bias there. I'm biased toward a lot of stuff, and Star Wars is the biggest one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've read a lot of Star Wars books. I love them all. I don't think there's been one that I hated. And that's probably because I'm biased again. But
that's good to know.
Just assume for me that Star Wars is at the top, so I'm going under the Star Wars, and that way I don't waste your time with another top 10 Star Wars books or whatever. So, all right.
Hold on, my caveats then. So I love King Arthur, but I've not finished The Once and Future King by T.H. White. I love The Princess Bride movie. I've not yet read the book, so that's not on my list.
I haven't either.
Peter David is one of my favorite comic book writers of all time, and he's done a lot of Star Trek books, and I haven't read enough of them to pick a favorite, so he won't be on there. And then a lot of the big-name sci-fi writers Isaac Asimov, Kurt Vonnegut, Philip K. Dick, and Ursula Le Guin. All I've read by them are short stories, which I love, but I didn't want to load down my list with just short stories, no matter how amazing I thought that they were. So these are just going to be novels for me, and no superheroes.
Yeah.
Stuff that relates to superheroes, but no superheroes.
So since we're starting with the top 5, you got any honorable mentions other than those?
No, that's it for me. I just wanted to make sure I said that before I got started. Do you have any?
Well, mine would be Hitchhiker's Guide.
Oh yeah, that's pretty classic.
That's a good book. I haven't read the sequels, but I read the first one. I think that's it.
Also, I left off things like Sherlock Holmes and mystery books because I tried to hew toward fantasy.
Those are more detective.
Right.
All right. Well, let's jump in. What's your number 5?
Number 5 for me is Brave New World. It is a book set in the future, and it pictures man having given himself over to pleasures of all varieties and how that sort of deadened him inside, and just that struggle. We actually are living in an age that is sort of there are clear parallels where we have ignored things in the favor of pleasure. So I'm not judging binging on Netflix because I binge watch stuff all the time. If I turn on the TV and my favorite show is on and they're doing a marathon, I'm hard pressed to not sit and want to watch it all day. So I'm not judging. I'm just saying, like, this book, when I read it, I want to say it was middle school or early high school. I was just shocked.
Yeah.
And how visceral the imagery and stuff was. Huxley, the way he wrote it, it was mind-blowing. I mean, it literally was. Like, I had not read anything he'd written before, but I read this instead of 1984 for a class, and I just thought it was really good. So, dystopian future kind of setting, and it was just really good. So
cool. All right. My number 5 is Ted Decker's The Circle Trilogy.
Okay.
And my favorite would be book. Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think my favorite one was White.
So what are the colors? White,
that's the
green?
Third one. So the first one is black, and then red, and the third one's white, and the fourth one is green. Was a trilogy, and he added a 0 book.
Okay.
I haven't actually read green yet, but I've read all the others. I had black in my hand, but I really changed it on a dime. I really liked the story from White. It was really good.
And that's the one you told me you found in the trash, right?
Not White. I think it was black.
Okay.
If you don't know much about Ted Decker, he's a Christian author. But this series is about a guy who goes back and forth between worlds, and so he. I don't want to ruin it in case you go read it because it's a good series, and he has a whole bunch of other series that go around it. He's written a ton of books in that universe. But
so does he have power, or he uses a machine?
No, neither.
Oh, interesting. Okay, now I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to look it up.
Well, basically, I'm not going to tell you how it happens. But basically, every time he goes to sleep, he wakes up in another world, convinced the other one is a dream.
Ooh.
And he goes back and forth between these two worlds. And, excellent.
That's neat. Dan Zier might be into that.
Excellent.
With his love of Sleepwalker and stuff.
So just a really good series. I haven't read the last one yet, but it's good. It's really good. I love it. They actually made a comic book series out of it. So
really,
yeah, you can find it somewhere. It's
cool.
Usually not at comic book stores, but they had it at Lifeway for a little while. I
Man,
almost got
at
them.
this point though, I mean, like I'd rather have the books
Right. I mean,
personally.
the books are excellent. The books are really good. It's it doesn't it's very strange at first, and then each book is just completely different, and it's amazing how he keeps them the same but different. Uh,
Yeah.
and I haven't read the last one yet, Green. It's been years since I read the others, and I need to. But supposedly they make a circle, and so the first or the last one leads back into the first one somehow. Now
Ooh,
that's what I've been told. And then
that's an interesting plot choice.
there's a whole nother series that I've got. If you've seen my room, you can see on the bookshelf. They're all on the bookshelf. There's 6 more books called the Lost Books, and I don't know how they play in, but basically, there's some important books in the trilogy that are basically those books, and then there's a couple other books that he wrote as side stories that play into it as well.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting, really, really interesting. And a lot of it has to do with like written word and books, using books as power objects. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
No, that is cool.
So, highly recommend it. It's Ted Decker's Circle trilogy.
Cool.
And the first one is called Black, and that one's also really good. So,
Nice. Alrighty. Number 4 for me is H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. First of all, it's sci-fi, and he's known for a number of sci-fi books, including The Time Machine as well, which is my first introduction to him. And but this is my favorite, and here's why: there's aliens, there's awesome. It's a world war, literally, right? Like Mars versus Earth. You have this overcoming the odds ultimately in the story. Spoiler alert. um, but no, I like this story, and one of the big reasons why I came to like it so much is it was utilized by the authors who created the original Guardians of the Galaxy as sort of a launching point for the future into which the characters exist. So the Martians came, invaded Earth, and killed a lot of heroes. Kind of like in the X-Men Days of Future Past, the Sentinels kill a bunch of heroes. Here,
yeah.
the alien invasion led to it, and then it, everything in that universe spun out of that. And so I just really dug that, and it's just good, right? It has the history with it, with the radio show, right?
Yeah.
Was it Orson Welles was reading it, and people thought it was a news broadcast and were like tripping out and stuff like that. And of course, it's been used like the Justice League cartoon show. The first few episodes had that similar sort of invasion angle with the tripods and all that, and just really good stuff. So
Yeah. Okay. My
I won't
number
ruin how it ends, but it's really cool how it.
my number 4 is Harry Potter.
I haven't heard of that guy.
And my favorite one is Book 5, which is The Order of the Phoenix. I know a lot of people really didn't like that one because it was really long, and Harry Potter is super emotional throughout the whole thing, which is kind of the only bad part about the book. Um, but I really liked that, um, he starts teaching everybody, and they actually really start doing magic for the first time. Um, I love to hate Dolores Umbridge, but I really like the whole series. The only book that I don't really care for is 6, which is Half Blood Prince. I know everybody loves that one, but I hate that one. Uh, I feel like you could get the whole series without that one, and it still made sense. Um, so there's like 1 or 2 plots that happen in that one that are necessary for the last book.
Mm.
But you take those two plots out, and the entire book is pointless. So, at least in my mind.
Them's fighting words.
I know some people disagree, but I really like Harry Potter. I actually watched the movies before I read the book. But I still enjoyed reading them. And no, it's just a great series, really well written. Of course, they have their problems, but overall, I really enjoy the books. So,
All right. Number 3 for me is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I read this in high school, and it's slow going at first, but this book for me is kind of like the way a lot of folks who like Moby Dick talk about Moby Dick.
yeah.
Because you see the different sort of archetypes: man versus man versus God, man versus himself. And really, that's what spoke to me about the monster in the story, in the way he's battling these impulses that he has. There's some sense in which he wants to be just left alone, kind of like the Hulk. Um, but he can't get away from where he came from, and he can't get away from who he is, and how the world sees him, and that really drives the story there. And as a geeky, heavyset teenager, those aspects really spoke to me. Plus, I read it at about the same time I was learning French, and there's like whole sections of the book or pages of the book that are in French,
Yeah.
and I was able to read most of it, and I'm like, I feel pretty confident about myself. It's one of the first books I remember taking and copying extensive quotes from as well, into my notebook, because I'm like, wow, that's some good stuff right there. So yeah, it hit me at the right time in my life, and it's so like, so let me just say, I've seen the old was it 50s or 60s black and white movie, and while there's a place in my heart for that movie, it has nothing to do with this book.
Yeah.
Because the Frankenstein in that movie is not the Frankenstein from this book. The guy with the bolts in his neck and the flat top and not the same thing. This guy speaks multiple languages, right? Like, so yeah, it just, like I say, it hit me at the right time. So,
all right. My number 3 is the Chronicles of Narnia.
ooh.
I really like this series. My favorite is the Silver Chair, and it's mostly because I love Puddleglum, who is just hysterical.
He's a great character.
And I like the owls as well. One thing I like about that one is it's the book that Eustace really gets to shine.
Oh yeah.
And I love Puddleglum. Puddleglum's my favorite part of it.
Glimfeather, I'll just say this: Glimfeather is a gangster name. So if you can name a character Glimfeather and he doesn't come across as being
too true. But you had Voyage, where Eustace was kind of a jerk, and then he eventually becomes more heroic by the end. And Lewis had to set it up in just the right way so that you would like him as the hero in the next one.
That's right,
I
did.
And they do such a great job that Silver Chair, he just becomes this awesome hero. And I think there's some great stuff in that one. Puddleglum is really the main reason that I love the book, but there's a lot of good that's in there.
Dude, and the green, what is it? The Lady of the Green Kirtle or something. She's a good villainess.
Yeah. The guy who played Puddleglum in the old version, I guess it's the only one we have, the BBC version, was the Fourth Doctor in Doctor Who.
No way.
Yeah. I'm blanking on his name. I should know.
Tom Baker.
Tom Baker. That's right.
I only
That's
remember
right.
because you told me that so many times.
Yeah, so Tom Baker plays it. And I never knew that until I watched it not that long ago. I was like, that's Tom Baker from Doctor Who. So, no, and he does a great job. He does a great job. But,
Doesn't that add a whole extra level when Glenn Feather's saying to who, to who?
yeah. But it's a great series. Even though it's a children's series, like adults can enjoy it. It's really well written. It's a fun story. It's real short, so it's not a hard read. And
Yeah, they're like 100 pages apiece.
I think they're all going to be books that I'll cherish till I'm old and gone. So, I love the Chronicles of Narnia. They're really well written. Um, and yeah, it's my number 3.
All right. My number 2 is The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
That's also my number 2.
Oh, great. So we can talk about this together
There you
then.
go.
So I love the breadth of the series. I feel like it's.
I had the Silmarillion too, which I'm actually listening to again.
I haven't read that. I bought it recently, but I haven't read it, so I can't add that to my list.
Yeah, that's good.
But just the sheer breadth of this, the epic nature of this series, and how wide reaching it is, and like over the course of what 2.5 lifetimes for hobbits, right? Because you got Bilbo and then Sam and those guys, and the way it reaches all the way back for to the creation of the what is it? How do I not know the name of the world? Middle Earth. I'm like, what the world? I'm drawing a blank. And you get such a nice mix of characters, right? You've got Gimli, who's you have Aragorn, who doesn't seem like he's going to step up, but then, of course, spoiler alert. You have Sam and Frodo and their buddy relationship.
I'll say my favorite is the Return of the King.
Yeah,
because in that one you get the battle with Shelob. That's her name, right? The spider. Shelob's lair. Right. Yeah. You get a lot of Smeagol, Gollum action. You get the Return of the King, of course, which is great.
Which is what the story's been building to. So.
You get the Battle of the Ents. You get the Battle of the Shire. Just so much good stuff going on in Return of the King. I love it. You get to see Faramir, who is one of my favorite characters in the book. Didn't care for him in the movie. Loved him in the book.
Yeah.
I like Boromir too, but I liked him better in the book.
Yeah.
But
I'm more of a Hobbit guy. I started with that one.
I love the Hobbit too. The Hobbit's great.
I love it's a crew or a group of. As a small child, watching cartoons and then reading this stuff, I like that it's a team book, right? Like it follows this team of folks through their adventure, and with Bilbo sort of being the linchpin there. So
well, and you have kind of like Bilbo's like your entrance into the world of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Because that's usually the first one you read, and Bilbo's closest to like the proper Englishman. Worried about tea time and second breakfast and all these proper things, and he gets thrown into this wild adventure, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And you just want to hang on and follow it with him. So
I love him. It's just a great, and the fact that he Tolkien created so many languages just for the series and created such a deep history and mythology, because you've got the Silmarillion. I haven't read the Children of Hurin, but I plan to one day. And I think there's some Lost Tales.
Yeah,
I haven't read those either, but just massive world building, and he's like the quintessential world builder.
Yeah.
Drew maps. He wrote languages, wrote books, wrote
Speaking of
histories.
maps, you still have those, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Some
You guys don't know this, but Jonathan had the Middle Earth maps up as you walked into his apartment when he lived here in Wake Forest. And when I'd be waiting for him to gather his things for us to go somewhere to film these superhero chats when we were going off site, I just stare at those.
Yeah, I used to just come
And
home and stare at them sometimes too. Because I was listening to the Lord of the Rings my last year there, and I was like, oh, so that's where this is happening. That's where this is happening. And then over the my door, some previous roommates had put up the Prancing Pony. So that was fun too. Anyway, so that's my number 2, Lord of the Rings, with Return of the King being my favorite.
all right, so if Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit have breadth going for them, for me, my number one has depth going for it, and I'll explain that in a minute. But number one for me is Narnia. You mentioned it's a kid's book, and it absolutely is, but it's one of those ones that you love as a kid, and then you grow up and you love it for entirely different reasons. My favorite of the series, because I just read through this with my 7-year-old in the last year, would probably be Voyage of the Dawn Treader. One of my favorite characters is Reepicheep, and
I
that's
love
where
Reepicheep.
um,
He's the best part of that book.
he is. He gets started in Caspian, but he really like his character arc comes to I'll say completion, not to its end, because he comes back later. But
It's
just
amazing how much you care for a little mouse.
I know, right? Like, okay, so I'm going to be real here because this is just our channel, and we want you guys to feel like family. So, as I'm reading the story to my son, as Reepicheep's arc comes to its end, where he's about to depart to the Mount.
We're not going to spoil it for you in case you haven't read it.
You don't want me to spoil it then?
You can say what you're going to say, just don't say what happens to him.
Okay, so Reepicheep is getting ready to go off by himself somewhere, and he does something that's uncharacteristic. And in that moment, like I'm trying to read this to my son, and I'm breaking up, trying not to start crying because the way that C.S. Lewis has written this story, it made me a grown man emotional. Okay, like you have like once you've read Prince Caspian and you follow Reepicheep, and then you meet him again in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I'm telling you, like that when we get to this moment, like I'm excited for Reepicheep, and you're just like, yes, this is what we've been waiting for. And I don't even care that I'm telling you guys that because like that's just the way it was for me. Also, I love the opening line. It's like his name was Eustace Scrub, and he almost deserved it. And I'm like, that is the best opening line of a book I've ever read. I love that line, and I feel like the book does a good job pointing out that Eustace, he needs to change the way he carries himself. And then we see that character arc, right? Because you mentioned that, and it's good. And there's character arcs for Lucy, and Caspian has to become the king that Narnia needs. Like this, it's growth across the board for all these characters that you thought you knew, but like he tweaks them and causes them. It's the same reason I love this book is the same reason I love Wally West. He's had character arcs where he's got to grow and change. Now I hate Heroes in Crisis, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there. I'm just saying, like, this Narnia series, it rocked my world. When I was a kid, I'd only read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which stands alone as an amazing book. And Liam Neeson as Aslan, I still think is really great. That movie is really awesome. But the books, as good as the movies are, the books can't be done justice um, in the constraints of a popular movie. So
they're really
praise,
good.
yeah, they're just so good.
They're really good. All right, my number one. I haven't told Lewis what this is yet. Is C.S. Lewis, The Outer Space Trilogy.
Okay,
And my
I thought
favorite,
that. Yeah, I thought this, so. Out of the Silent Planet. Yeah, I
Out of
thought
the
that was
Silent
second.
Planet is my favorite. Paralandra is good, and the Hideous Strength is also good, but I love Out of the Silent Planet. It's just a short book, but it's so cool. Basically, the main character is named Ransom, and he accidentally finds himself in a spaceship that's shaped like a house, and gets kidnapped and taken to Mars.
But they
And
don't call it Mars.
right, they don't. Um, and what he finds there is a whole nother world with other beings and creatures that he ends up learning the language of, and um, running away from his captors while he's observing this entire new world that's opened up to him. It is cool, um, and it's definitely written. It's a little more difficult read, I should say,
It is.
um, because C.S. Lewis is just masterful writer. Um, but and he wrote it for adults of his time.
Right.
So I think our reading level's gone down since then. But just a fantastic book, just a fantastic series. Um, and there's space travel, there's fighting, there's good and evil, learning new
Alien.
languages, aliens. There's Merlin, King Arthur, all sorts of fun stuff. Not all in Out of the Silent Planet, but in the trilogy itself. And
Right.